Pittsburgh do this all the time. I've been playing them for 13 years. When you avoid the middle, they go into the middle. It's never changed.
I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, 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 black and yellow.
And welcome back to the 6th episode of the Steel City Sermon presented by Blitzalytics.com. I am your host, Mr. Roy Countryman, or as most of you know me on Twitter, at PreacherBoyRoy. I've been really diving into the scouting end of things, going into it here, taking a look at some XFL stuff, but I cannot stop watching my Steelers every week, and the type of storylines that are coming out every single week are just outstanding. And what the great storyline we have, and that's the first one we're going to step into here in our prelude, is Mr. Duck Hodges. And our Steeler Nation, you guys really showed up out west in Arizona Stadium. It looked like a home game almost out there, very similar to what happened to the Chargers when we went out west there. You guys travel great. It's amazing to see that kind of support. I really love to see it coming from a PA Steeler fan. So keep coming out, Steeler Nation. We're going to need it. But as I said, Steeler Nation, we came home with a W from Arizona. It was going to be a tough road trip going across the nation there. A young up-and-coming quarterback that I'm entirely his upside is up there. I'm one of his biggest fans. Wasn't so sure how our offensive line was going to combat their edge rushers, but we came out with that W nonetheless. And the first guy we got to talk about in our prelude here is Mr. Duck Hodges. You know, him himself. Yeah, we got to give you the Duck round of applause. You look like a grizzled veteran out there. There was nothing that was too big of the moment for you. You were able to escape pressure whenever it came in the pocket, roll out, pick up a couple key first downs. You just established that air of confidence in our offense that Mason, I'm sorry you wasn't able to this year. Not saying you might not be able to down the road, but it's just been outstanding to see that type of camaraderie that he's built with some of these young, under the radar guys, the Benny Snells, the Kareth Whites, they're all coming together at one time, and it's an amazing team story that we're seeing being built here. And that's the one storyline that Mike Tomlin is driving home, that, the sum of the parts are better than any one person, and it has just been outstanding to watch from an actual football, team perspective and the way it's been built there. So, Duck Hodges, big tip of the cap to you. Your stats for this past game were 16 and 19. You were highly efficient, 152 yards. You didn't have to pass for a lot. You had that one touchdown to Johnson, no interceptions. Your rating was 117.5. You did take 3 sacks, but I'm not going to be mad at you. Like I said, you escaped pressure. You were able to pick up a couple key first downs with your legs when you needed it. You didn't look flustered. You took your shots when you needed to, and you just hit guys in rhythm. And it's been just so refreshing to see you under the center and see where you can possibly take this team, into the playoffs, as we're hoping for a deep run. And maybe, we'll see that storybook ending and have the Super Bowl. As you can see, it is Christmas time. You can see my Christmas tree behind me and my lights on my hat. And I'm really wishing and hoping I'm going to be writing Santa a list. Hopefully it's going to be number one is a Steelers Super Bowl victory. But Duck Hodges, big tip of the cap to you. You just been having confidence. You look like a veteran out there and are having fun. Next guy we got to highlight here is Mr. Deontay Johnson. Boy, you really stepped up after having a really rough go of it a week ago. You were even challenged reportedly by Coach Tomlin, whether that was individually, one-on-one, or in front of maybe the wide receiver group, to step up your game because they needed you down this stretch run. And you just stepped up remarkably. You caught a touchdown pass. You had 6 receptions on 8 targets. You had 60 yards. That receiving touchdown there. You ran for 16 yards. And the pièce de résistance was the punt return for 85 yards, I believe the second longest in Steelers history. And it was just poetry in motion. It was beautiful to see. We haven't seen that type of explosive plays on the return game since Antonio Brown has stopped returning punts for the Steelers. So it's just been a really nice blend to add to this offense. It sometimes struggles to move the ball, But if you can flip a field every once in a while and get a key return, maybe 20 yards, 15 yards, or maybe break one here and there with the type of defense that we have, that might be the game changer if we do sneak into the playoffs to come out with a W. And Deontay, I got to give you big kudos for stepping up, ringing the bell and answering it when Coach challenged you. So just amazing work there. I can't wait to see your future. Hopefully you just keep building upon this and have a great second half of the season going forward. Oh, and on top of it all, you were named AFC Special Teams Player of the Week for that awesome return. So congratulations, Deontay. Now our third guy we got to talk about and we're going to dive into here is Joe Hayden. Everybody and their brother in Steeler Nation and the NFL, for that matter, has been, pumping up Minkah Fitzpatrick. And it is true. Since we've got him, our defense has been transformed into another type of beast. But we can't say enough about this renaissance seasons for Joe Hayden. He is in his 30s now, but this is just high-quality corner play. He has been able to play off of Steven Nelson opposite of him, who's having an outstanding year himself. Since Fitzpatrick has come in, it's just let everybody kind of fit their mesh and fit their piece in the whole scheme. They haven't been able to do too much to the point to where it affects their play. They're playing within themselves, making plays, being instinctual, reacting, and just making big-time turnover-worthy plays, and it is outstanding to see. And Steeler Nation, just to put a reference to this, I kind of took a look at some statistics from another corner that's being lauded as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and that is Mr. Stephon Gilmore for New England. And I was just looking at some pure stats here to compare them, and I'm not saying that Joe Hayden is having a Stephon Gilmore type season, because Stephon Gilmore is the elite corner in the NFL this year. But Joe Hayden is up there in that second, third tier, right below him. But let's just dive right into the stats, Steeler Nation. Hayden's stats this year look like this: 58 tackles, 52 of them solo. He has a forced fumble, 4 interceptions, which ties him for 4th in the league, 15 pass defense. Those 4 interceptions that he is tied for 4th with are right behind our own Minkah Fitzpatrick, Marcus Peters of the Ravens, and also Devin McCourty of the New England Patriots. They all have 5. So those are your league leaders. That's why he's in 4th. But if you dive in a little deeper in Pro Football Reference's coverage stats, he has only let 41 completions on 71 targets this season, which is a 55.4 completion percentage, which is great for any season of a defensive back. And he is really making plays on the ball. Those passes defense is what's making them numbers come down. And he's only allowed 4 receiving touchdowns all year, which is a great stat as well. And opposing quarterback rating is 68.6, which is a great season for a corner. And his tackling has been outstanding. He's only allowed 145 yards after the catch. So when he has let up a catch, he's tackled them on the spot for the most part. So just for comparison's sake, Stephon Gilmore, the Defensive Player of the Year candidate, his season stats: 42 tackles, 34 of them solo, no forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and he also has 4 interceptions. He's also tied for 4th with Hayden, and 14 pass defense. Now, jumping into those coverage stats, as I referenced before, in 13 games, he's allowed 40 catches on 80 targets, which is a 50% completion percentage, just slightly above Hayden's. But this is where his eliteness starts flashing, and that's his 0 passing touchdowns. Hayden's has allowed 4. Gilmore is none. You can tell he is just the absolute shutdown man corner. And his QB rating for the opposition is 44.6, which is ridiculous. And his yards after the catch, he's a solid tackler at 151, which is just a couple more yards than Hayden. So you can see Gilmore is the elite guy, but right there behind him is Joe Hayden, and he's having that renaissance season. And I just wanted to make sure to speak about him a little bit. We've really gotten on him for maybe missing a couple interceptions. He might have had another 2 or 3 more if he would have came up with them and been that league leader, but he's just having an outstanding season, like our defense all the way around. I know the pass rushers always get the glory, and Fitzpatrick, but Hayden has just been an outstanding piece of that puzzle. Then we're going to highlight the rest of the defensive contributors here. They sacked Kyler Murray 5 times. As we know, he was the league leader going in, but we are now tops in the NFL Steeler Nation with 48 sacks. We're only 4 off of last year's total in 52, and I think we're going to blow that out of the water easily. They also had 3 interceptions this past game, with TJ Watt having that huge interception in the red zone of Kyler Murray. As we all know, he doesn't turn the ball over very much, but the way he dropped down coverage and made a play on that ball, it is just absolutely stunning to see that type of play, and a reason why he's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Just a great player, not only a pass rusher, but all the way around. Those 5 sacks, some of the guys, just to highlight, Bud Dupree actually probably should have had more than the 1 sack he was toted with. Vince Williams had another sack. Cam Hayward and Mark Barron, who's played improving football coming down the stretch here. As I did mention, TJ Watt, he did have the interception, but his sack streak was snapped, unfortunately. But hopefully he'll get back on track here against Buffalo, coming right down and around the wire. But I can't forget also to just mention the special teams that have been absolutely solid. Chris Boswell nailed all 5 of his kicks, 3 field goals, 2 point-after attempts. Deontay Johnson, as I already mentioned him before, he was the player of the week on special teams for that 85-yard punt return. Jordan Berry, he only punted twice. He pinned 1 inside of 20. I'm going to give him a slide here, him and Coach T both, because of the fake punt call. It was because of a front they seen. Apparently, all the other players checked out of it. He apparently did not hear him. So I'm going to give him a pass this week for that, because if you would have seen the look in his eyes whenever he's seen all the guys going down in coverage and realized he's about to get crushed, I'm not going to blame that guy. So if that's all we're going to complain about, if we would have lost the game, I guess he would have been the GOAT, but we won the game, so go Steelers. And on top of that, our coverage teams have been really improved. Johnny Holton, Justin Lane has been doing well, Matakavich, and even Robert Spillane has been playing out of his mind since being elevated from the practice squad. So a lot of good, high-quality plays there. And Steeler Nation, as I said before, a big tip of the cap to you. You made State Farm Stadium in Arizona, or Glendale, Arizona, feel like a Heinz Field West. So just big tip of the cap to you. Now we're going to move on to our second part of the video series here, and that's my sermon session. Last week, we were talking about the end of the year and it coming into the end of the decade, per se, here in the 2010s. And last week, we took a look at the offensive players of the decade. This week, we're going to take a look at the defensive players of the decade and also highlight our special teams players of the decade as well. So we're going to wrap up that portion of the series. So let's just dive right into it. We're going to run a front and the positions almost exactly as what we've run the majority of time in the 2010s, and that's a 3-4. We're going to highlight 3 down linemen, 2 edge rushers, 2 inside linebackers, 3 corners, 2 safeties, and then we're going to highlight a kicker, a punter, a long snapper, a return specialist, and then a special teams ace. As we all know, those are your key players when you're looking at the roster. So diving right into it, we're getting into our down linemen. And this was a fun exercise to look at, looking at how much longevity a lot of these players have on our defense. It was really not that hard of a decision when it came down to it, maybe except for drawing straws at a third or a secondary position here. But the number one is the leader and the alpha male in the Steelers defense right now. And he learned from the old guard, and that's Mr. Cam Hayward. He has 131 games experience with the Steelers, 96 of them being starts, 380 tackles, 249 solos. He has 53 sacks all time, and that's an outstanding number from a down lineman. That's a 3-4 per se, but he's more of a penetrating defensive lineman. Changing the guard there. He has 6 forced fumbles, 5 fumble recoveries, 78 tackles for loss, 112 quarterback hits, and even 28 pass defense, which means he gets those big balls up in the throwing lanes. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler and a 1-time All-Pro selection. Outstanding presence in the locker room. On top of that, I had to put him as my number 1 selection going into it here. Number 2, defensive lineman, and this guy, he is always endearing in my heart. I loved him. He was my favorite Steelers growing up. Will always be one of my favorite Steelers of all time for his off-the-field activities and the good he does at Children's Hospital, playing Santa Claus, and all his charitable work with growing his beard out. And that's Mr. Brett Kiesel. Fear the beard. I loved that guy playing in. Loved his playing style. He played like a maniac. He loved getting up in throwing lanes. He might not have had the best stats, but he just was an all-around leader, a presence in that locker room as well. But just for now, remind you guys, these are only stats from the 2010s on, so I'm not referencing their whole career, so only 2010s on. He has 65 games, 57 of them being starts, 173 tackles, 104 solo. He had 15.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and 4 fumble recoveries, 14 tackles for loss, 30 quarterback hits, 20 pass defense, which is them long vines he used to get up in the throwing lanes, 2 interceptions, and even returned one for a touchdown, and he was a one-time Pro Bowler back in 2010. And he was one of the reasons why we got to the Super Bowl in that season. And then finally is the guy that was having a dominant season this year before he got injured, and he seemed to always get bit with the injury bug. But if you look at his stats, he's been an outstanding player for us, and I have high hopes for him going forward, that he can move past all the injury questions. And that's Mr. Stephon Tuitt. The former second-round pick has 76 games with us, 64 of them being starts, 202 tackles, 144 of them solo. He has 23.5 sacks already in his career, 4 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 38 tackles for loss, 69 quarterback hits. As you can tell, he's that penetrating type, same as Hayward. 10 pass defense. He likes to get his hands up in the throwing lane, and he also came down with an interception. That's a great front three right there. All them guys are big, strong, lengthy powerhouses for 3-4 defensive ends. And I kind of went more towards that angle than the Casey Hamptons and the Steve McClendon, who early in the 2010s was a quality player for us before he left for the Jets. Even Ziggy Hood, the former first-round pick who gets beating around here, was a quality, solid player, but he just didn't make the list. And then the guy that's really been balling out since Tuitt went down, Mr. Javon Hargrave. All those guys were in consideration for honorable mentions, but the 3 starters were Cam Hayward, Brett Kiesel, and Mr. Stephon Tuitt. Now we're going to move into our edge rushers, and this is the one thing that Steeler Nation is always known for, is that vaunted pass rush and us just Blitzburgh coming after you. And I'd have to start off any conversation with one of my all-time favorite, the guy I'm actually wearing here today, Mr. 92, James Harrison. This guy, the squatty build, self-made man, 5'10", 11-ish guy. He could truck you, pick you up, and throw you into the backfield. And he would definitely be not be the first guy you want to meet in a dark alleyway. He would scare the crap out of me. And I know his ending with Steeler Nation wasn't the greatest because the way he, I guess, slept in meetings and wasn't happy with his role. Went to New England to try to get a Super Bowl, but it just didn't happen. And I can forgive him for that because he was the self-made man. He was an undrafted free agent. He got himself to where he was at. But you can't lie when you look at the stats. He's one of the all-time great pass rushers in Steeler history. He had 86 games, 52 of them starts in the 2010s, 372 tackles, 265 of them being solo, which included a 100-tackle season from an outside linebacker in our system in 2010. 42 sacks, 14 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 62 tackles for loss, 90 quarterback hits, 10 pass defense, and 4 interceptions. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler in the 2010s and also a 1-time All-Pro selection in the 2010s. So he had to be the standard going in. As Tom likes to say, the standard is the standard, and he was elite in his time while we had him here in the 2010s. The next edge rusher, and I might snide past, maybe somebody had a little bit more production per se, but it's just his absolute ability to wreak havoc on offenses since we've acquired him. And that's Mr. T.J. turned down for Watt. That's right, T.J. Watt. And I'm hoping he gets Defensive Player of the Year here. He's had 44 games for us. He started all 44 of them. He's 161 tackles, 115 solo. In the small amount of time he's been with us, he already has 32.5 sacks. That is absolutely ridiculous. 12 forced fumbles and 3 fumbles recoveries. 34 tackles for loss, 63 quarterback hits, 16 pass defense. When he not only gets to the pass rusher, he gets those big long arms up in the throwing lanes. 3 interceptions, and he was already named to a Pro Bowl. So those are our bookend pass rushers, and it would be fun to watch on a Madden game. James Harrison on one side and T.J. Watt on the other. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of sacks when you look at that. Honorable mentions, Lamar Woodley. He was at the tail end of his career with the Steelers before the injuries ultimately knocked him down and had him go out west. Bud Dupree, who's really came on, and also Mr. Jason Worlds, who had a quality but not outstanding career with us in the 2010s. Now we're going to move into our inside linebackers, and these two are pretty cut and dry. But a lot of the guys that we put into consideration, or excuse me, when I put it in consideration, will probably be namesakes for the next generation in the 2020s going forward. But Lawrence Timmons, that's the old guard, Mike Tomlin's first round pick. Outstanding career for us. I know he had a horrible ending to his career with Miami, but he played 112 games, 111 of them games started with us, 832 tackles, 570 of them being solo. He had 23.5 sacks, which is outstanding from an inside linebacker, 8 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, 50 tackles for loss, 62 quarterback hits, 36 pass defense. That just says the world about him being an all-around linebacker. 11 interceptions from an inside linebacker, 1 return for a touchdown, and he was a Pro Bowler one time. So outstanding all-around talent. Early in his career, they wasn't sure if he wanted to be outside linebacker, inside linebacker. Great speed. He could match up with his running backs and tight ends, and was just an absolute force there as the middle linebacker in that early 2010s. So Lawrence Timmons is our first inside linebacker selection. And our second one, and this one goes even beyond just stats, and that's Mr. Ryan Shazier. Let's go right into the stats first, and then we'll talk about his impact on the Steeler franchise and the fans all around. 46 games played, 41 of them being starts, 303 tackles, 205 solos. He had 7 sacks, 7 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 24 tackles for loss, 18 quarterback hits, 25 pass defense, 7 interceptions, and he was a 2-time Pro Bowler. And that scene that we seen whenever he got injured on the field, you thought he would never be able to walk again. You're an inspiration, Shazier, and we leave every day in this Countryman household. And God has a plan for you, and we've already seen it coming through. And you've just been an outstanding inspiration to every Steeler fan and every Steeler Nation person that watches any of your highlights or your old game tape. And the impact you have on these young guys around you, the Devin Bushes, even the Vince Williams, it was there right opposite of you whenever you were playing. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're an outstanding presence, a big tip of the cap to you. I have highest respect for you and what you do, and I'll never lose hope that you'll one day maybe get on the field. But if not to, just know that you're a winner in life, and that every Steeler Nation fan is proud of you. And God bless you, man. Keep doing what you're doing. But you're outstanding statistically wise. I would have loved to see the rest of your career. I'm sure it would have been one of the all-time greats. With the way your work ethic was and your determination, but just outstanding off-the-field character, and just God bless you, man. Just be a blessing. Our other honorable mentions here, Vince Williams, the Hammer. He has, I believe, 17 sacks in his career now. One of the best delayed blitzers I've ever seen. Outstanding vocal presence and will bring the thump. I love watching him as well. Devin Bush, we only recently got to know him. That's why I said he'll probably be in the next generation and next decade if I'm still doing this elections for inside linebacker. And the old guard, Larry Foote, who came back and had a couple good years at the 2010s for us in the transition from Ferrier to Timmons as a leader. So those were our honorable mention there. Our linebackers and edges as a whole, our starters were James Harrison, T.J. Watt, Lawrence Timmons, and Ryan Shazier. Now we're going to go right into the secondary, Steeler Nation. Our starting corners will be Ike Taylor. He gets downgraded a lot because of his ball skills, but if you watched him in his prime, he would shut down people. He'd run with them, all the time, all day, and not give up many completions. He had 65 games for us in the 2010s, with 64 of them being starts, 221 tackles, 174 solos. He was an outstanding run defender. Only 5 interceptions, 52 pass defense, as you can tell. He got a lot of hands on the ball, but just didn't have the ball skills to bring him in. He had a sack, a forced fumble, and also 4 tackles for loss. Just outstanding presence, and you knew he would take the number 1 assignment any week he was out in the field. Our second cornerback was a lot about longevity and the play that he had, his level play when he came back after the trade from Arizona. That's Mr. William Gay. He was just a solid guy throughout his whole career, and I could not write him off in this conversation. He had 112 games for us, 69 of them being starts, 378 tackles, 308 of them being solo. He's an outstanding run defender, 10 interceptions, and he had 5 of them returned for touchdowns. There, it seemed like every time he intercepted a pass here in the second go around with us, that he was returning for a touchdown. 62 pass defense, 5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and 23 tackles for loss. Great all-around talent there, and he just had to be an addition. He's a great guy, great things off the field for what he does, for just his charities and his use off the field and what he believes in, what he went through in his life. Outstanding. God bless you too, William Gay. You can tell, Steeler Nation, all these guys not only are winners on the field, but off the field as well. And you can tell that's why we're a great franchise. We not only value, measurables and statistics, but how much a heart is in these guys. Our third selection and final for the cornerback position is Joe Hayden. He's having outstanding this season this year, but he's been outstanding for us since we've had him. He's played 39 games with us, 39 of them being starts, 141 tackles, 121 of them being solo, 7 picks, 34 pass defense, 1 sack, 2 forced fumbles, 8 tackles for loss. Just an outstanding player all around since we got him from Cleveland. I can't believe they cut him when they did. So it just was a real blessing in disguise that he got to be in Pittsburgh with us. Our honorable mentions that we took into account, or excuse me, I keep saying we, it's me. Steven Nelson, who's been outstanding for us here since he came over as a free agent, and also Mike Hilton, just an outstanding nickel, run defender, blitzer, all-around playmaker, and I don't want to see him go anywhere for a long time. Now we're going to jump into the safeties. This one was pretty cut and dry. The quality we had early in the 2010s was absolutely elite, and then we had a kind of a lull until now we got Fitzpatrick and some young guys in Terrell Edmonds. But our first safety is the Pittsburgh Steeler, my favorite Steeler of all time, and some of the plays that he's made has just been absolutely breathtaking. And Troy Polamalu is the first safety. 65 games, 65 of them being starts, 326 tackles, 237 solo variety. He had 12 picks. He returned 2 of them for touchdowns, 40 pass defense, 5 sacks. He had 7 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and one of the fumble recoveries were returned for a touchdown. He had 26 tackles for loss. He had 10 quarterback hits. And a grand total of this whole decade, he is a 3-time Pro Bowler. He is a 2-time All-Pro, and in 2010, the year we went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Packers, he was named the Defensive Player of the Year. Hands down, this was unanimous for me. I didn't even have to look very long. He was our first selection as the safety. His opposite safety that we're going to start, it was his playing mate and his battery mate for so many years, Mr. Ryan Clark. High-quality free safety, really let Troy be able to have the freedoms that he had because of the way how solid he was in pass coverage and also in the run defense, being that last line. He allowed him to be able to be that chess piece and pawn that not many teams could match up with. But in the 2010s, he had 63 games with us. He started 62 of them. He was just under 400 tackles at 396, 263 of them being solo. He picked off 7 passes, 23 pass defense. He had a sack, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 10 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, and he was also named to the Pro Bowl one time with us during the 2010s. So outstanding safeties there, high-quality people, and I'm hoping for this next decade we have a couple young up-and-comers here that are playing on this defense currently that are going forward. So that's our defense, Steeler Nation. And now we're going to jump into our special teams, and we'll just run down through the entire list that we have so far and see what you guys think about it. And let me know, at me. Let me know if I overlooked somebody or maybe you think I should have valued them a little more. So special teams, pretty easy. Kicker, Chris Boswell. He had 71 games for us. He's up to 4th now in field goals made in Steeler history with 124. He even threw for a touchdown pass that not many people know, and he was named to the Pro Bowl one time, which says something because Justin Tucker is in our league, one of the all-time great kickers. Our punter, and this is mostly by default because he had the most time, and that's Mr. Jordan Berry. He had 77 games with us over the past decade, and he averaged 44.2 yards. So there was not much conversation there. He was really kind of steady, maybe not the greatest, but he is our kicker our punter for this decade, Mr. Jordan Berry. Long snapper, and it's the enviable Greg Warren, who was with us for a long, long time, Mr. Reliable. His knees finally gave out, but he played in 111 games for us during the 2010s. absolutely outstanding player, reliable, didn't have many off snaps, and he was our long snapper for the 2010s. Return game and return man. I looked at both punt return and kick return here, and it really came down to just basically one guy, and it was AB. He's already been named to our wide receiver list for the decade, but he also is the return man for the decade, and you can't lie with production. And as I was speaking with Deontay Johnson earlier, he's the first guy that's really shown any type of electricity on the return game since AB. But the stats for him in the return game come down to 2 of them. He had 4 punt return touchdowns in the 2010s for us and 1 kickoff return for a touchdown. End of story. And there hasn't been many more that's even returned one for a touchdown. I know Juju has. I know there's been a couple guys here and there maybe broke one and got one, but he had 5 of them. So that's pretty much hands down. He's our return specialist. Then the final one in conversation here is the special teams ace. I just wanted to throw out another name to really highlight some of the special teams players. Overall for the decade, we've had some highs and lows, but we've had some high quality players here and there that are really key to the whole system. And pretty much it came down to 3 guys for me, and that was Mr. Tyler Matakavich, Darius Hayward-Bay, or Roosevelt Nix. And Nix was already on our team before at fullback, so I kind of pushed him aside even though he made the Pro Bowl because he is a fullback and our special teams ace. And Hayward-Bay, that's pretty much all he did for us, and he did it well, but I just cannot get past Tyler Matakavich. He was named to the Pro Bowl in 2018 as a special teams player. When he is on that field, he is always the first one down in coverage, and on punt blocking teams, he's came up with a lot of big plays there. He's one of the captains. He is an outstanding presence in that locker room as a leader. He prepares himself no matter what, and he'll even not embarrass himself when he has to take defensive reps. So Tyler Matakavich, you're a special teams ace selection for the decade. So just to recap, Steeler Nation, our defensive and special teams players of the decade. First defensive lineman, Cam Hayward. Second defensive lineman, Brett Kiesel. Third defensive lineman, Stephon Tuitt. Our 2 edge rushers, James Harrison and also TJ Watt. Our inside backers are Ryan Shazier and Lawrence Timmons. Our 3 corners are Ike Taylor, William Gay, and also Joe Hayden. Our 2 safeties are Troy Polamalu and Ryan Clark. And then finally, our special teams players, Chris Boswell, kicker, Jordan Berry, punter, long snapper, Greg Warren, our return specialist, Antonio Brown, and then finally, our special teams ace, Mr. Tyler Matakavich, Dirty Red himself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of exercise we did here with the offensive, defensive, and special teams players of the decade. I'm going to keep going with this kind of theme until we hit the new year. And we're going to look at next week the best draft picks of the past decade. And I'm really excited to get into that because, as you know, I'm a scout at heart, and I love looking at the undervalued, maybe even undrafted guys that we picked up in the last decade have played big parts and key roles in the winning system that we've provided here. So we're going to transition to one of our last portions of the video, and that's previewing this week's game, Week 15. We're already there, guys. We're almost at that finish line, and hopefully it's not an end of the meal ticket and going home. Hopefully it's a playoff bye, and we're seeing where we're going. We're buying that round-trip ticket to somewhere else to go play for another week. But we're coming back home from going west. We're coming back to Heinz Field after that impressive victory against Arizona Cardinals. Now we're setting our sights to Buffalo, who are in the number 5 seed. This has big playoff implications, this matchup. And Buffalo are right up there with us because they even have an outside shot at winning the AFC East with a couple losses here that New England has experienced. It's not out of the realm that they could get that AFC East crown and really maybe put New England on the ropes. But I will say it's an outside chance. This game was flexed in the Primetime. It's an 8:20 game as we stand right now, and I love that idea for a Sunday night, getting an underrated matchup. And really putting the highlight on Duck Hodges and Josh Allen. I know Buffalo really doesn't get the fanfare they deserve with this season they're having. It's two coaches that used to be former teammates at William & Marriott, Sean McDermott and also Mike Tomlin. So you got another storyline there. But I got to make this announcement because I just read it on Twitter, and that's Cam Hayward and Steeler Nation. He wants everybody that's attending this Sunday evening, to make sure you're wearing all black if possible. They want to black out the stadium in regards to them wearing their Color Rush uniforms. So anybody that's listening that's going to Heinz Field on Sunday, make sure you're wearing your black jerseys, and let's get the blackout going at Heinz Field. I think that'd be really exciting. But let's dive right into this matchup. We're going to go through our injury report first, and we had some high hopes beginning of the week to see maybe some players back, but it seems like, at least for one, we're not going to get to see at least this week, and maybe not anytime soon, unfortunately. And that's Juju Smith-Schuster for the Steelers. We'll start off with them. He doesn't want to say he re-aggravated it, but my friend Jim Wexell had tweeted out he was running in the open field when he went back down. He left the practice field, went to the trainers, and it didn't sound good. He did miss practice on Friday then. Adam Schefter even reported he's not expected to play after he aggravated his knee injury on Thursday. So it seems like it's not going to happen this week, probably not going to happen next week. And if we're making the playoffs, I'd rather him just stay on the shelf, get healthy until we can get there full-hearted and hopefully have his services ready for a playoff game if we get there. So, and it sounded like, I believe Jim Wexell and maybe some other reporters had said about it, he believes it was a knee injury that was the PCL or MCL variety. I wasn't really certain about it. So it's a multi-week injury, the beginning one. Now he may have re-aggravated it, so it's a kind of up-in-the-air status. It's a day-to-day type thing, and really week-to-week probably we'll be looking for Juju going forward. So that's kind of disappointing. Also out this week is our starting tight end, Vance McDonald, who was concussed the last game in Arizona. He wasn't able to practice this week and clear the protocol other than a limited session. So he is not in this game. He has been deemed out. That really leaves us thin with only, the Nick Vannett and Zach Gentry. Zach Banner is our third tight end. Don't be surprised if either Friday afternoon or Saturday some point before game day on Sunday that we elevate somebody, maybe a Kevin Rader from the practice squad, just so we have some more depth there in case another guy would go out. Because the last game we only had basically Nick Vannett as the tight end going forward. So the other guy and the key contributor from last year, who was a Pro Bowler, and that's James Conner. He did practice all week as a full participant, and he does look like he's on track to play, but I would not be surprised if they held him out one more week, being that Jalen Samuels was able to come back from that groin injury and practice later on in the week. He looks like he's trending up. I wouldn't be surprised maybe they give Conner one more week just to make sure that it's okay to go and he's not going to re-aggravate it, because this was already be the third time if he does re-injure it. And I believe that he even said himself, if he's got to be smart with it or else it's going to have to be surgery. So, and you don't want to mess with the dynamic. We're already having that winning formula with, the Benny Snell and the Kareth White that's really been looking explosive. And even Samuel's been impressive as a pass protector, improving there, and as a pass catcher. So it'd be interesting to even see, where he would fit in. He would fit in at some point because, like I said, he was a Pro Bowler. He is probably our best all-around back. But just make sure you're right, James Conner with your shoulder. I don't want to see you re-aggravate it. The Bills injury front here, Ty Neske has an ankle injury. This is be his fourth straight game that he'll be missing. So he was kind of out of the equation there. Starting right guard John Feliciano got ill on Friday. He was actually sent home. He's questionable. They're not quite sure. It'll probably be a game time decision on that front. And if he's lost, that'll throw some question marks about their pass protection up front, as they have to shuffle some players in and out, being that would be two starters down with him and Neske. Also, defensive lineman Corey Liuget was out with a knee injury and only practiced in a limited variety on Thursday and Friday for him, and he's questionable going forward. So those are our injury reports for both teams. Now we're just going to jump right into going for three here. The three storylines that we need to keep an eye on for Steeler fans: can Duck hunt against one of the best secondaries in the NFL? That's right. I'm playing on the Duck hunt. That's right. Let's see the Duck hunt. Bills secondary is high quality. Tre'Davious White, great corner, can pick a lot of passes off. A lot of ball hawks back there and sure tacklers in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. And don't sleep on Levi Wallace. He's an outstanding corner. He's really coming into his own. And they also have some really good nickel players here. They're one of the all-around solid pass defensive. They're instinctive. They like picking passes off when they're put in a position. So Duck will have to keep that momentum going from last week's game even. He didn't have to throw the ball a lot, but he was very efficient. But he's got to keep making them smart decisions. And when the time and opportunity presents itself, you got to take the big throw and put it up there and trust, James Washington, the, resurgent Deontay Johnson, and, maybe some of these young pass catchers will step up. The Deon Cain may even have a big catch this week. So we're going to need you, Duck. We're going to need you to hunt quite well this week. Second storyline, the defense will need to shine in prime time. We got to keep that shine flowing. Our defense is among the best in sacks. It is the best in sack-wise, and it's also the best at taking the ball away in the NFL. But the defense will need to slow down the big playmaker Josh Allen and the hard-nosed running attack with Frank Gore, the ageless wonder, and the young up-and-coming Devin Singletary. They'll need to mind their gap integrity with the big running style that Allen has. He can do the RPOs and get outside. And they'll also need to watch for the downfield throws once the play breaks down. He's quite similar to Ben, and he can move the pocket, break the confines of the pocket, and then look to throw the ball deep to his big-time playmaker this year, John Brown, who's having a Pro Bowl caliber year. And in our final storyline, how will the running back snaps be divvied up? As I was talking with James Conner going forward, we're not quite sure what his role is going to be this week. And Benny Snell's really endeared himself to Mike Tomlin. He really likes the way he runs people over and finishes his runs and his demeanor. Kareth White, every time he touches the ball, he looks like a big play is going to break open, and he's going to be running down the field. Samuels has really flashed as a pass catcher, even running the ball here and there, but he's really improved in pass protection with his vision and ability to anchor. And Edmonds, even key special teams contributor, and flashed on the rare occasions he's got the ball, especially in the one game where he was the key, rock toter. So Connor, he's a Pro Bowl caliber player. He's had this shoulder injury most of the year. So is he going to get back into this rotation? Are they going to give him 5 to 7 carries, 5 to 7 touches? Or are they going to leave him out this week? Or are they going to take away some snaps maybe from Samuels? Maybe, because Connor's up there for our team lead in receptions still, even though he's been out. Are they going to put him being the main third down back and kind of cut back Samuels? It's going to be a real interesting dynamic. I don't think you're going to see a lot of cut in Benny Snell's playing time. And even I think Kareth White is going to continually see his 5 to 7 snaps. If anybody here that's going to see a reduction, it's going to be Samuels and Edmonds. And I wouldn't be surprised even if one of our running backs may be deemed not have a hat on Sunday because of if Connor gets the call here. Because of the special teams variety, you probably have to pick between those three: the Connor, the Edmonds, and also Samuels. And Samuels and Edmonds both play a key role in special teams, a lot of the different units. So it'll be interesting. I think it might still, even though they've seen the improvement in Connors, I think they might give him that extra week. And that's just my inkling. I have no, inside source or anything. I just think that they might make sure for this playoff run, if we can win without him, as the equation already has been, that we might give him that extra week just to make sure he's right so he don't re-injure it. Now, we're going to roll into our 3 matchups to keep an eye on, and that's Cody Ford at right tackle for the Bills. He's a rookie this year. He's played pretty well, but he does have some lapses in pass protection, and he's not going to want to have that, especially in home games with Mr. T.J. Watt, who is our left outside linebacker, and he's going to see him most of the day. I think Watt's going to get him early and often here. I think he's going to have a big performance, especially after snapping his sack streak. He's going to be hungry and want to continually pad that Defensive Player of the Year stats. So that's our first matchup. Second one is Tre'Davious White, who I mentioned before, with their secondary being high quality, going up against James Washington. That's going to be the guy that's going to carry him down the field. He does have great ball skills. James Washington has showed that he's really developed and been able to go up and get the ball at its apex. That's both 2 bigger-bodied players and are able to, get a jam on him possibly with White, and Washington's going to have to combat that. So that's going to be an interesting matchup there. Our final matchup is John Brown, who's having a Pro Bowl caliber year, against Steven Nelson, who's also been high quality caliber play at corner. So that's left wide receiver John Brown against right cornerback Steven Nelson. Those are our 3 matchups to watch. So we're going to dive right into our 3 keys to victories for the Steelers. First, slow down that Bills running game. And that's Frank Gore, the ageless wonder, and Devin Singletary. They're averaging 135.3 yards a game. That is great in this system. And don't forget about Allen's contributions as well. He can really break the pocket, and he can run for long distances if you give him an option. So we're going to have to mind our P's and Q's, and our contain is going to have to be there. We're going to have somebody spying them, Devin Bush, Mark Barron, somebody of the like, and really be mindful that he can break the pocket. We've seen what happened with Mayfield and his ability to break the pocket and contain, and it really hurt us. So we got to learn from that mistake. We did well against Murray last week, and hopefully that momentum keeps going. Number 2, not only do we have to contain him, but we've got to put the heat on Josh Allen. I think for him going through progressions, if he's under pressure, his accuracy really wanes. He is a big body quarterback and can take some hits, but with our vaunted front, we should be able to get him on the ground and really affect his confidence going forward. So we need to put the heat on him early and often. For our offense, it's get play action working. We've seen a little bit of that last week. We need to establish the running game and then do the play action deep pass. And we're going to need that in this game to be able to have the time of possession on our side. The defense, really combating the offense here. The Bills had the running game and then hit the big plays when they present themselves. So that leads us finally to my prediction. What's going to happen this week? It's going to be a great game on Primetime. I'm glad to see both of these teams get that type of opportunity to show out and flash on Primetime. I am picking the Steelers 24, and the Bills will have 20. So 24-20 Pittsburgh. So that's going to lead me to our final portion of this video, and that's always how I always wrap it up with our trivia question. Last week's trivia question was, who is the single season rushing yards record in Steelers history, and how much did they rush for? That is none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Barry Foster. In 1992, he had 1,690 rushing yards, and he was named to the Pro Bowl. And he was a first-team All-Pro in that season, so outstanding season for him. This week's trivia question is in honor of Deontay Johnson being named the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week, and that is who has the franchise record for punt return touchdowns in Steeler history, and how many was it? And just a little caveat for anybody that may be answering here, and there's actually 2 of them, and they both had the same amount of punt return touchdowns. So that's going to wrap it up for the Steel City Sermon, episode 6. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I hope you hit the like and the retweet, and make sure you're giving me some feedback here. As you know, you can reach out on the show's Twitter. It's at Steel City Sermon. Also, you can reach out to me personally on my Twitter at PreacherBoyRoy. I've had a blast here, and as always, how I end mine every single time I'm on Blitzalytics. Stay humble. Be a blessing.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pittsburgh do this all the time. I've been playing them for 13 years. When you avoid the middle, they go into the middle. It's never changed.
Remember time when you see me, you know everything. Black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I put it down from the whip to my diamonds. I'm in black and yellow, 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 black and yellow.